Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are tuning in. Thank you so much for joining me today for my next installment of Facebook Live and Instagram Live. So, thanks for being here. Really appreciating your energy, your willingness to engage in this delicate and intense topic. And just to kind of set the stage here, some of you already know perhaps that I'm offering these Facebook and Instagram live sessions as a way of building up momentum to an online meditation immersive program that I'm offering. And so I want to speak a little bit about the program. I won't go on as much. Last time I realized I went on for about 10 minutes talking about the program. So I'll try to keep it a little bit shorter so we can get right into the topic of equanimity and compassion. So the program that I'm referring to is entitled Awakened Living, and this is a year-long immersive online meditation program. Everything that will be offered throughout the entire year from January 8th to December 20th is offered live. Nothing will be pre recorded. So I'm there with you all live interacting in the sessions. I try to keep the participation down to about 15 to 20 people. So it's a nice small cohort that we develop together like that. Over the duration of the Awakened Living course, we're going to be taking a very comprehensive and non sectarian exploration into the very earliest teachings from the Buddhist tradition. Those include the four foundations of mindfulness, the seven factors of awakening and the hindrances, the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And we're also going to be taking a deep dive into a set of practices that help us widen our window of tolerance. That is really, I've come to see that as being key to a lot of the early teachings of the Buddha, although the Buddha never referenced the window of tolerance. That comes to us from a neuropsychologist named Dan Siegel. But after studying a lot of Dan's work and a lot of work around trauma and trauma healing, I've come to recognize that this window of tolerance that we can cultivate and widen is really that space of equanimity. They're the same thing. And so maybe I'll talk a little bit more about that in today's offering. So, although I'll be drawing primarily on the teachings of the Buddha, and a lot of neuropsychology as well, and somatic psychology, there's no religion being taught. There's no. I'm not trying to convert anyone or anything like that, or convince anyone of any belief. So people from all walks of life and any belief can feel comfortable joining the program. So, over the course, we're looking at numerous mindfulness practices, meditation practices. We're going to be systematically cultivating a continuity of mindful awareness so that we are more and more aware of our present moment experience throughout our day. So, the benefit of all of that is that we come to connect to the experience of our life in a deep sense of wisdom, curiosity, kindness, and care. So, the Awakened Living Immersive is offered in two sections, really primarily to cater to two different time zones, or to many different time zones, if you will. So, section A is from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., Wednesdays and Saturdays in Thailand. So that equals 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Tuesdays and Fridays, East Coast time. Section B is offered from 7:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. Wednesdays and Saturdays here in Thailand. That would equal 7:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. Wednesdays and Saturdays, East Coast time. If you're unsure about which section and where the time is for your area of the world, please go to Google and check out any world conversion time clock. There's tons of them available for free online. You can also go to my website, suchsweetthunder.org, and I have a clock time conversion link on the website. And you would need to go to the website to register for the course anyway. So, all right. So let's get into the topic at hand. And so I'd like to start with a meditation practice. And in this meditation practice, I will offer phrases of equanimity. And I received these phrases from my teacher, Ken MacLeod. And the phrases that we will use here today, just for this brief practice, are as follows. May I be free from preference and prejudice. May I know things just as they are. May I experience the world knowing me just as I am. May I see into whatever arises. And so these phrases are composed in a way that are designed to invite the meditator to really feel into the embodiment of this quality of equanimity. Now, very often, and the phrases are written in such a way to elicit this, very often a resistance comes up. And that's good. These phrases are said to be used for insight into the very habitual ways that we resist, in this case, the quality of equanimity. And in that seeing, when we start to see how our unconscious self-defense mechanisms have developed over our years on Earth, those defense mechanisms might be hindering our experience of equanimity. And so in that seeing, we start to take those hindrances out of unconscious awareness into conscious awareness, and we can start to work with them from that place. As long as our hindrances and resistances remain in the unconscious, we don't have the opportunity to work with them, and it just feels like who and what we are, right? Those resistances, it just feels like a part of our personality, right? We even say things like, oh, I'm just not good at equanimity, right? Or I can't be equanimous, my mind is always judging something, right? So, that's a sign that there's some unconscious resistance at work. Right? So we want to use practices like these ones to bring the unconscious resistance into our conscious awareness. Because who doesn't want to be free from preference and prejudice, right? And so, let's go ahead and do a meditation on that. We may do that for 15 or 20 minutes or so. So, I'd invite us to get into our most comfortable meditation posture, whatever that might mean for you. And really any posture will do. You don't have to be sitting cross-legged on a cushion on the floor. You can be standing or lying down or seated or walking. I wouldn't recommend doing this while you're driving. And if you think you might fall asleep, then taking a posture that can support your alertness can be very helpful. Even if you don't think you'll fall asleep, taking a posture that is alert and awake can really help us engage in the practice. So. And meditation can be done with your eyes open or closed. They're maybe some visuals that can be helpful in this kind of practice. So you may want to have your eyes closed. But if that's not comfortable for you, then no problem. Just meditate with your eyes open, maybe with a soft gaze. Yeah. So I'll go ahead and ring the bell and guide us in. So the invitation here is just to arrive into this present moment. And there are many ways of arriving and connecting to the present moment. For this practice, let's go ahead and start with the experience of sound. And so we're invited here to simply become listeners of the present moment. You might notice the sound of bird songs outside, or the gentle hum of an appliance, maybe a heater, or a fan, or an air conditioner. Maybe there's a dog barking nearby, or a conversation unfolding in the distance. Perhaps noticing the occasional car or truck passing by outside, or airplane flying overhead. Some of these sounds might feel pleasant, and other sounds might feel unpleasant. And still, some other sounds might feel neutral. But regardless of how we interpret the sounds, perhaps recognizing how sounds are always present moment experiences. And so sounds can make a great guide to the present moment. Should we notice our thoughts ruminating into the future or the past, we can always reconnect to the present through the experience of sound. So just resting, listening. These sounds are not better than, they're not worse than, they're not equal to any other sounds. It's just this present moment. And then while we're here resting and listening, the invitation then is to bring awareness to the body. And simply noticing how the body feels in this current posture. Noticing the texture of clothing resting against the skin, soft or smooth or coarse or rough. And we might notice the temperature of the air elsewhere against the skin. Maybe a coolness or a warmth of the air against the hands or the face, the neck and throat or the arms, the feet. So this could give us a full view of the entire body from the bottom of the feet to the top of the head. We might offer a phrase like, the body feels just like this right now. It's not better than, it's not worse than, it's not equal to any other felt experience. It's just this fresh, present moment. It's just like this right now. And so we don't need to change anything, however it is that we're showing up. It's just like that. And then if you notice the mind wandering into stories or distractions, just remember that's very normal. And we might label that thinking, thinking, and gently returning back to the present moment, to the sensations of the body, the sounds. So we don't need to make the thoughts into a problem or try to get rid of them. Simply noticing what's happening. And in the next breath or two, we'll begin to offer phrases of equanimity to our own heart. With each phrase, we're invited to briefly visualize or imagine what our life would look and feel like if each phrase was completely reflective of our own life circumstance. May I be free from preference and prejudice. May I know things just as they are. May I experience the world knowing me just as I am. May I see into whatever arises. And if you'd like, you could place a hand over the heart as a way of inviting the phrases to land. Or maybe a hand on the heart and a hand on the belly, if that feels supportive. May I be free from preference and prejudice. May I know things just as they are. May I experience the world knowing me just as I am. May I see into whatever arises. Taking a few moments here to simply notice how each phrase is landing for you. Maybe there's lots of resistances that come up, doubts or fear, aversion. And that's normal. We don't need to try to get rid of the resistances, but rather holding space, holding compassionate space for any resistances that may be there. And likewise, noticing any feelings of equanimity, any feelings of balance or non-judgment or clarity that might be there. We're not making one better or worse than the other. We're just noticing our experience of the practice. There's no wrong or right. May I be free from preference and prejudice. May I be free from preference and prejudice. May I know things just as they are. May I experience the world knowing me just as I am. May I see into whatever arises. If you are using that move of compassionate support, I'd invite us to place our hands back by our side or on our legs, wherever is comfortable for you. Once again, noticing any resistances that might be there. And likewise, noticing any feelings of equanimity, a sense of non-judgment and seeing, a sense of knowing. Inviting us then to really move into that quality of equanimity as much as feels possible. In a sense, submerging yourself into that quality of non-judgment. Maybe as a thought experiment, you might inquire, what would it feel like if I were able to soak non-judgment in to the body? The entire body soaking in a river of non-judgment, of balance, of equanimity. What might that feel like if that river of non-judgment was to soak in through the surface of the skin, all over the entire body? And what if that elixir of non-judgment was to soak in to the muscles and tendons of the entire body? This non-judgment and balance, soaking in from the bottom of the feet to the top of the head. And continuing to soak in this warmth, this frame, this lens of non-judgment and balance, all the way to the marrow of the bones. And what would that feel like? What would it feel like if our entire being were drenched in that quality of non-judgment and balance? Every cell in the body in fine balance and non-judgment. And so in a few moments' time, we'll begin to shift away from the guided meditation and back into a conversational space. And I'll cue that by ringing the bell 3 times. So thank you so much for joining me in that guided meditation. And if your eyes are still closed, you might just gently begin to open them and start to reorient yourself to your surroundings. Yeah. So you may be hearing my cat Diva in the background there. She really is wanting to go outside, actually. And she's an indoor cat, and she very rarely gets in these moods where she's craving to be outdoors, but today's one of those days, and I took her for a walk, a 45-minute walk this morning earlier. But yeah, she's really in the throes of desire. Anyway, so moving into the topic of equanimity and compassion, and I'm going to be talking a little bit here about the window of tolerance, since I brought that up earlier today. And last talk too, I brought it up and I didn't really go into it too much. But so the window of tolerance is, again, it's a concept that was given to us through by the neuropsychologist and mindfulness teacher Dan Siegel. If you're not familiar with Dan's work, I strongly recommend checking him out. He's really wonderful. And you know, the idea is that we all as human beings have kind of a window of tolerance for the experiences of life, right? And you know, we're kind of cruising along depending on what we've experienced earlier in the day, or you know, how well we slept the night before, or what we had for breakfast or lunch. Our window of tolerance will be anywhere, you know, like really wide if we're feeling very resourced and nourished. And our window of tolerance can be quite limited if we're feeling hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, right? If we're feeling under-resourced, then our window of tolerance is quite small. And so equanimity, for me, I've come to see equanimity as a kind of referring to the experiences that land within the window of tolerance, right? That's, you know, that's kind of the frame of equanimity, is the window of tolerance, right? And the things that land outside of the window of tolerance, and we all have things that land that way from time to time. We may not be able to hold those with equanimity, those experiences, the really challenging experiences. And so that's where compassion comes in, right? If something is really landing for us that we can't hold without judgment, right? That we can't hold without wishing it were different somehow, then we can meet that experience with compassion, right? So somebody says something really mean, critical to me, right? And maybe, you know, I'm hungry, I'm angry, I'm lonely, I'm tired, I'm under-resourced. So I can't receive those words in that frame of non-judgment, right? Ooh, that's really painful. So then I can hold that with self-compassion, right? Naming the emotions that are there. I might feel anger, sadness, frustration. Then I would say, all human beings feel these emotions from time to time, connecting with our common humanity. And can I be kind to myself? This is a challenging moment. Can I be kind to myself? Right? And so that move of self-compassion, going through those three pillars of self-compassion, if you will, naming the emotions that are there, mindfulness, recognizing that all other human beings feel these emotions, and exploring, even very briefly, exploring that move of kindness. This can, you could see it as widening our window so that we can more easily meet the offensive words that were sent my way. Right? Or we could see it as kind of a reframe of what's being offered so that it lands in our window. Either way, right? Either way it works. So I want to look at the phrases of equanimity and then the phrases of compassion and kind of notice them side by side. So I think this can be quite helpful. So the first phrase of equanimity, may I be free from preference and prejudice. May I be free from preference and prejudice. So this doesn't mean that we're not supposed to have preferences or prejudices, right? Preference, prejudice, these are normal, natural aspects of the human experience, right? We all have them. But the key word of that phrase is the freedom. Another way of framing that phrase would be, may I not take my preferences and prejudices seriously. That would be another way of looking at that phrase. May I be free from preference and prejudice. So we see our preferences and our prejudices for what they are. Oh, that's just my prejudice, right? That's just me making a decision about something before I know all of the information. That's a prejudice, right? We prejudge something, right? So we all do that. Our brains are designed to prejudge experiences so that we recognize them as being safe or dangerous, right? So we're not trying to live a life with no preferences and no prejudices, but to simply recognize this is my preference, rather than seeing that preference as an actual part of the landscape. Right? Rather than seeing our prejudice as etched into the fabric of our experience. Right? And we do this all the time, right? We hear a song on the radio, we say, oh, it's such a bad song. Right? That's a perfect example of how we project our preferences and prejudices onto our experience, and we kind of consider them inherent in that experience. We stop recognizing that it's actually me projected outward. That's just a simple example, but a lot of us, many people are doing this all the time. Right? So the phrase of compassion, may I be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. We can kind of get a feel for how these are similar and very different at the same time, right? How our preferences and prejudices so often lead to suffering for ourselves, for others, right? May I experience the world, may I know things just as they are. May I know things just as they are. And the equanimity or the compassion phrase, may I accept things just as they are. So I'm having a hard time knowing that plaintive cry of my cat, right? To hear that cry without judgment, with equanimity. And that's fine. And then I can accept things just as they are. Ooh, wow, she sounds really upset. Ooh, that's tough. And then accepting my urge to help, which is compassion manifest. Right? And then in that acceptance, I can then more easily free myself from my preferences and prejudices around the situation. So we see how these qualities of compassion and equanimity work hand in hand. Right? These practices are never an invitation to accept transgressions, right? To condone bad behavior. Right? So when things are landing outside of our window of tolerance, whatever it is, we can meet that with compassion and then move forward from that compassionate space. That's the idea. So that we're not moving forward with anger or fear or numbness, craving or desire, right? We're moving forward with present moment awareness. The next phrase, may I experience the world knowing me just as I am. That's the equanimity phrase. May I experience the world knowing me just as I am. And so right away for me, what comes up there is all of the things that I've done in my past that I would hate for the world to find out about. Right? It brings up this real ethical kind of imperative in a way, right? If I'm really going to experience the world knowing me just as I am, then I'd really better straighten up my act. Right? So it has that kind of tone to it in my experience, in my practice. And the compassion phrase that goes so beautifully with that, may I experience the world accepting me just as I am. So for all of the ways that I've hurt and harmed myself, may I offer forgiveness there to myself. Right? For all of the ways I've hurt and harmed others, may I ask and receive forgiveness. Right? So that compassion, that phrase, may I experience the world accepting me. It's like, whew. There's a lot of forgiveness there, a lot of compassion required for that moment. And once we've, connected to that acceptance, then we're more ready to experience the world knowing us just as we are. Right? And the last phrases here, may I see into whatever arises. That's the equanimity, this clear seeing. In Sanskrit, that's sampajana, to clearly see. To clearly see, without preference and prejudice. It's interesting, the equanimity phrases, they sort of flow through each other. May I be free from preference and prejudice is a lot easier when we know things just as they are. Right? Because prejudice comes from not knowing things just as they are. Right? We prejudge before we have all of the information, as I was saying. Right? Then may I know things just as they are. This doesn't mean, a type of knowledge that we gain from watching or reading the news. Right? This is a kind of connection to the present moment in a felt way. Right? It's not knowing concepts just as they are, it's knowing our experience as it's arising. What's happening in the body, what's happening in the mind, what's happening in the heart. May I experience the world knowing me just as I am. And may I see into whatever arises. Such a beautiful set of phrases, right? These aspirations that we can cultivate. And so the equanimity, compassion, also kindness and joy, those will be offered throughout the last 12 weeks of the year-long program that I'm offering, Awakened Living. So hopefully you will be able to join me there. in the Course. And so I hope you found our time here together helpful and fruitful and productive. And I'm going to draw our talk to a close here, so I will ring the bell. By the way, if any questions or anything come up, please always feel free to email me or send me messages through Messenger. Or, and if you want to sign up for the course, you can always message me as well. Or go to the website, suchsweetthunder.org. Okay, here's the bell. Thank you.